So, welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. Well, today I'm really quite excited. I'm quite excited for two reasons. One, I have a returning guest, and two, I'm joined by, I'm going to say, a legend. He's probably going to be going to demur on that sort of point, but he's definitely a legend. And I'm delighted to say I'm speaking today to Sara Richter, who is my returning kind of guest, who is the CMO of SAP and Marcus, but also legend himself, Fred Reichheld, who is a Bain & Company Fellow, the creator of the NPS system, and a New York Times best-selling author. Welcome both to the podcast. I hope you're both well. And how are you doing?
Well, thank you,
Good
Adrian.
on this end.
Such a pleasure to be back, and we managed to talk over each other. We did that very well.
Well, that's kind of fine. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to go and ask you both to introduce yourself a little bit, to tell me a little bit about yourselves and the work that you do. And I'll tell you what, I want to start with kind of yourself, kind of Sarah, because you're a returning kind of guest, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adrian. So my name's Sara Richter. I have the privilege to be the CMO for SAP and Marcus. Marcus has been part of SAP for about 5 years now, and we have that privilege. And within Marcus, we sit within the customer experience part of the organization. Marcus itself is purpose-built for marketers, and what we care about is getting marketers to build and launch and scale AI-powered, personalized omni-channel engagements that actually really deliver business outcomes for brands. And that's what we spend our time doing.
Perfect. Fred, sir.
Fred Reichheld. I graduated from business school in the early 70s, joined Bain & Company, and have been there ever since for the last 30 years or so as a Bain Fellow. And I have, my whole career has been focused on loyalty of customers, the important economic impact of loyalty. In fact, I would argue the most central element in financial success of a business is earning the loyalty of customers and turning that from an idea into practical tools and metrics and processes that help executives run a business to earn the loyalty of customers, as opposed to, or not necessarily opposed to, but in addition to or support of financial metrics, which we do measure brilliantly today.
Perfect. Now, Sarah, you were back on the podcast. You were on the podcast back in the March of last year, and where we talked about the customer loyalty index. Now, I know you have new data to talk about, and I love a bit of data and a bit of research.
I know you do. I know you do.
And I wanted to get into that, but before we get into that, I wanted to come to yourself, Fred, first, because I believe that you recently spoke at the SAP CX Connect event, and during your talk, you said every interaction, whether your brand, people, or systems, should deliver value that customers and partners would genuinely miss if it disappeared. And I was like, oh, okay. And what I wanted to ask you to go, can you explain what you mean when you say that? Because it's kind of quite a big thing to say, and also quite a big challenge in many ways.
Yeah, this is sort of a philosophy that came from Bill Bain. He
Okay.
said every time you talk to a client or a customer in our case, you're either gaining share or losing share.
Right.
And think about every interaction, every communication, every time they think of you, you're either increasing your reputation or diminishing it.
Hmm.
And in that sense, companies need to be very, if they want to be thought of as a worthy supplier that you're proud to be associated with, for heaven's sakes, keep track of those interactions and whether you're gaining share or losing share.
Right. And I guess it's like, 'cause that feels like a very human sort of like way of thinking about it. So from almost a relationship perspective, right? So it's a bit like,
Outrageous.
I know, kind of, who knew that kind of business is human?
Yeah,
But
I think, the philosophy behind loyalty, and I think behind great marketing, is that every time you touch a customer, the objective should be to enrich their life
mhm,
as efficiently as possible, but every touch, because enriching a customer's life turns them into to an asset who comes back for more and refers their friends. That's what really drives financial prosperity and profitable growth.
yeah.
But it's not clear the way most companies keep track and keep score with accounting metrics today.
And you also have been quoted as saying that, particularly I guess the originator, of one of the originators of the NPS kind of
Oh
system,
no, the originator.
the
There's a
originator.
lot of, every success has many fathers.
So
This one has one.
I apologize profusely. You're the originator of the NPS system, but you also there's a highly reliable indicator of an organization's ability to grow. But it's that here's the kind of the trick. You also said that organizations that win treat it as a management system rather than a one-off score. And I think we've seen a lot of people kind of like score chasing and stuff. And you're actually seeing it's more of a systemic system sort of like thing. And can you explain to me what treating it like a management system kind of looks like? Just to kind of clarify that, because we see a lot of score chasing around where people quoting NPS numbers and things rather than actually thinking about the dynamics that are involved with those scores.
Right. And I'd say, in my last book, Winning on Purpose, I make the argument that, this score is turning into a less and less reliable
Mm-hmm.
tool because when you fixate on a survey-based score and there are sampling dynamics, and for heaven's sakes, what are response rates on surveys today?
Mm-hmm.
1%, 1/10 of 1%. It's sort of an absurd idea that you can have a reliable metric based on surveys. So the same idea is behind that promoter system, that if your goal is to turn customers to enrich their lives and treat them so they'll come back for more and refer their friends, that's what you should measure. How many of your customers are coming back for more, and how many are referring their friends? And with that as the primary objective, you build a system around what's the root cause for them coming back or not, referring or not? What are the economic implications? How do we hold people accountable and give them appropriate objectives? So it's a strategy of, how many customers are we going to touch this year? And of that, what's our yield rate of turning them into true promoters? Not just score nines and tens. That doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
People who come back and especially refer their friends.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I mean, as you said, that Fred, this is all about building better, stronger, loyal, and more valuable relationships with customers and fostering loyalty with them. Now, Sarah, I want to circle back with kind of you and kind of like then dig into the data, particularly this new customer loyalty kind of index data. So, what's your data telling us about the state of loyalty right now?
It's really interesting, and it has definitely changed since we last talked about it, Adrian, which makes for a much more interesting conversation, I think.
Mm.
But it is something that I think brands need to think about. Loyalty is changing, and even brands that we think of as iconic, that have been around for a long time, that would seem to be very stable, are actually potentially seeing loyalty slip through their fingers. The bonds that consumers are forming with brands seem to be more fragile, more fleeting, and I think touching on some of the things that Fred's talked about, more complex to earn. And as a result, what we saw in the data was true loyalty, that nirvana to which all marketers and brands aspire. For the first time in the 5 years that we have been looking at it in the UK, it stalled.
Okay.
So that is disturbing if you are a brand. I think for any marketer, any business person, and again, to Fred's point, I wholeheartedly agree. It's not just about marketers. Businesses need to think about loyalty. Why is that happening? And how are consumers changing? And how do brands need to change and not harken back to the things that they have continued to do that are perhaps not working as well as they used to?
So So true loyalty has kind of like stalled. I mean, I know that kind of their research from last year's identified like 5 different types of loyalty. Is are we seeing kind of that it's that there's still 5 different kind of types, or are there it's kind of like fragmenting even more?
So it's fragmenting, and I think that's what's interesting. We
Okay.
had 5, and we had consistently had 5 for a lot of time doing this and really thinking about the data, and this year, we really saw the emergence of a 6th type, and that 6th type is called trend loyalty,
Okay.
and we're seeing it mainly driven by Gen Z.
Okay.
And what is trend loyalty about? Well, it's about things like 43%, which is a lot really, of Gen Z shoppers in the UK bought something just because it was trending on social
Right.
media somewhere. Just
Okay.
'cause. 64% are telling us that they care about the products. They're loyal to the actual product,
Right.
not loyal that loyalty does not necessarily extend to the brand.
Okay.
And then there's an emotional piece, 45%, and I really find this fascinating, are more likely to trust a product if it goes viral. Wh
Okay.
why think about why things go viral and how that is now impacting purchasing and decision making. So this is really something I think all of us have to start to get our heads around the way a different set of consumers are thinking about the products, are thinking about the brands, are thinking about how they're engaging. So it's not that loyalty's vanished on us, it's still there, but it is evolving, and it's evolving really quickly, and all of us need to learn to move at the speed of the culture that it's evolving with.
Right. I mean, that's fascinating. It feels like almost like it becomes this kind of a there's a ob obvious kind of conclusion from that. It's like chase virality, which that might be a hostage to fortune, or the and there might be this because it feels like it's a slightly ephemeral sort of like thing, if that's the right kind of like words kind of around it. So it's like it feels like that people need to kind of lean into it to sort of almost like better understand their customers, and that might provide some of the clues.
I agree, I think you also the trick, I think, is to figure out how can you be present in that viral moment, if you
Right.
like. But then how in the point of creating that engagement, of making things better for the customer, how do you then use that as the stepping stone to creating loyalty that goes beyond that viral moment? So,
Right.
what have you learned from this customer in that interaction? What are you going to do next? On what channel? How are you going to engage that's going to move them from just a single transactional interaction to something that actually has longer term life cycle of customer journey, true loyalty? And how do you keep working on that? So how do you understand that? I think that's where it gets interesting and challenging for brands, but also you can be very creative, right, as a marketer in that
Yeah.
instance.
Now, I also gonna know that I notice rather that when people talk about loyalty, they talk a lot about B2C kind of loyalty. It's all very much consumer driven. But I also noticed that your loyalty kind of like work actually delved into the B2B sort of like space, and the B2B space is not necessarily talked about as much as it should, particularly kind of given the kind of amount of value it contributes to economies generally. So what are you seeing in terms of the kind of the B2B space and loyalty? What's the kind of things what are the dynamics kind of there? What's the research telling us?
So it was fascinating. So this is the first year that we've done a business loyalty index as well as a consumer loyalty index. So it was fascinating to see the data and actually compare the two. Where did they intersect? Where did they not? And not as different as you might imagine that they would be.
Okay.
We really felt and saw that that emotional logic that I was just talking about in terms of Gen Z shopper on TikTok that's being driven by trend is actually shaping enterprise procurement, which is really quite remarkable, I think. So our B2B loyal types, we have 6 types, and I would encourage anybody to, if you're interested, to dive into the report and understand a little bit more about which each one is. But the adaptive loyalty type, which is about 24% of the audience, mirrors trend loyalty. And you see UK buyers rewarding suppliers that innovate and stay relevant, very much the way that a consumer is rewarding a brand that innovates and stays relevant from a consumer side. And I think really it shouldn't be that big a surprise to us because everybody who is a buyer in a B2B world, I am, well, we're also a consumer in our
Right?
normal everyday life. So it really shouldn't be that big a surprise that the expectations and demands that we have for brands when we're acting as a consumer for ourselves. Why is it a surprise that those are not the same as we are when we're operating in business today?
Yeah.
So I think there's this real convergence of the two, and it's no brands can no longer think, "Oh, what, I need to do this on the consumer side and not worry about the B2B side." That's
Yeah.
just not true anymore.
Um, Thank you for that. I mean, that's fascinating. It's just like bringing yourself to work, right? It feels like.
Exactly.
And but so let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? Which seems to be the elephant in every room right now, which is the impact of artificial intelligence and all the different applications and new software and things that are out there. What impact is it having on loyalty? Because it feels like sometimes that the distance between kind of brands and consumers or customers in a broader sense is possibly widening given some of the tools that are being kind of used kind of like now.
I think as with anything, it's how you use something and how you think about it. And I think AI can be an enormous help and enabler in loyalty.
Mhm.
It does not replace human. I want to be very clear about that. In no way does it replace the human interaction. But what AI can help you do is scale. It can help you scale data, which means you're scaling understanding. And if you can do that, then you're empowering personalization at scale across your different channels to your different audiences in all of these different places as one to one as possible. And that ability to be real time and to really use that volume of data, that's something that really you can only really do with AI. You just can't move fast enough to keep up if you're trying to do it purely from a human base. So from my perspective, it's using AI to help you scale, to help you automate so that you understand your customer even better from every moment and you can act absolutely in that moment, and that's what's allowing you to not just have these disconnected one single experiences, but actually create an overall relationship and an overall, life cycle with your customer.
Perfect. Now, I want to, Fred, I'd like, if I may, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation and show you this. Because this is from back in 2001. You wrote this book called Loyalty Rules. And in the book, you set out 6 principles for building sustainable loyalty with stakeholders. Now, I'll just go quickly. It says play to win, be picky, keep it simple, reward the right results, listen hard, talk straight, preach what you practice. So those are the 6 principles. I wanted to ask you for your perspective on, like, in this AI powered world, as Sarah has just been discussing, you know, do those principles still apply, or have they kind of changed?
I'm pretty amazed how relevant and timely the stuff I wrote 20 and 30 years ago remains. This because I think, I did a lot of things wrong in my career, but one thing I got right is the core of success is treating another human being in a way that enriches their life so impressively that they want to share that with a friend
Mm-hmm.
because they think that will make their friend's life better.
Mm-hmm.
It's the highest road there is in creating value, and that's how the businesses who grow the fastest to get that stock price appreciation. That's the core engine that's driving it. So, take that one principle, reward the right results. Most companies get this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
As something that Sarah said, that in the trend, viral spread, which has emotion in it, is what is driving these really most impressive growth stories. But viral is one word. I like to use word of mouth, which is
Yep.
referrals. It's
Yep.
friends telling other friends, not because they want to make more money for the company, but because they think the friend's life will be better off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that drives prosperity. My next Harvard Business Review article will share some pretty shocking data I shared with the SAP audience earlier. When you look at every new customer cohort coming in each year, about 20% are referred by friends for an
Right.
average company. Now, great companies, it's 80, 90, 100%. But we look at the 20% of customers who are referred, they generate 70 or 80% of the profits that come from that new customer cohort. So it's 20% of the customers driving most of the profitable growth. So isn't that a result you'd like to reward? Of
Absolutely.
course. But how many companies even keep track of referred customers versus all other channels, what the true economics are through time? And instead, they are doing what's easy to do today, which is, well, I'll pay my sales force a commission on new revenue,
Mm-hmm.
irrespective of whether that is ephemeral revenue that never comes back to pay for the investment or the commission.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we've got a lot of, and I think it's true for a lot of marketers. We get paid for things that we know how to measure easily. And right now, companies don't keep track of this. And so probably the most important, powerful business force, treating people right, enriching their life, turning them into assets, is invisible.
Yeah.
And the reward system is exacerbating the problem because we're paying for revenues, not generating profit streams. And very few companies are yet recognizing the power of this force of bringing in customers, not with your sales force, but by inspiring your existing customers to become your sales force. because they're not only cheaper,
Mhm.
they bring in the right new customers
Yeah.
who have a higher likelihood to be happy and turn into true promoters themselves.
Indeed. I mean, it's the the referrals based on in their own sort of like subconscious pre-qualification in many respects. So at the end of every year, I produce this kind of like predictions kind of piece, which is like a curated predictions kind of piece. And this year it turned into a gargantuan affair where I got 777 different predictions from nearly 400 different people.
Some are sure to be right.
Yeah, completely. It was a big old dartboard, and I chucked a dart at it, and it's gonna work. Anyway, I was able to distill them down into about 60 or so different predictions over about, I think it's about 15 different sort of themes. And one of the themes that came out was, or one of the predictions that came out was that, so it suggested that brands were moving away from more points-based loyalty programs, and they were moving towards more of a whole business approach to loyalty because they just see the bottom falling out of some of this sort of like stuff. And that feels like kind of what you're advocating, kind of like Fred, is taking a bit more of a whole system approach to this. But I wanted to ask you, Sarah, about, does the research support that sort of shift?
100%. I think
Okay.
that we would absolutely say the one of the worst mistakes you can make is to think of loyalty as a program. Loyalty is not a program. It has to be central to your business. That's the
Mhm.
fundamentals of it. And the things that influence it are so much of what Fred has already chatted about. It's relevance and values and emotion and trust. Is there an opportunity to have something where there's points as part of your interactions? I
Mhm.
wouldn't say that is necessarily not something you wanna do, but it shouldn't be the whole. You need to really think about brand experiences, and when we look at the data, the UK consumers are telling us that it's memorable experiences, personalized engagements, things that are unique. That's what they remember, and that's what positively impacts their loyalty, not the fact that they got 25 points yesterday when they bought something.
I mean, Fred, are you seeing the same sort of thing, that sort of shift that people are going, well, loyalty programs, they served us well for a while, but now we're going like, we actually see we need to play a bigger game, let's say.
I think most loyalty programs are pretty tired and a lousy investment. The best ones are going to be used as platforms for understanding who is referring whom and why,
Hmm.
and using that to inform the business about where to invest in CX and where to wow customers in a way that is profitable and sustainable. And for heaven's sakes, we've got this rewards program. What's the rewarding the right result? Well, you want to know which customers have been so delighted that they refer a friend.
Hmm.
I don't mind recognizing or giving points to someone who refers a friend as long as it's modest. I like it even more if that referring customer actually gives the value to that referred friend
Hmm.
because they think this should be a gift. Try this, your life will be better. So I think that's the jujitsu. But I'm repeating myself, but my goodness, there's a lot of money wasted on so-called loyalty programs. They have nothing to do with loyalty. It's just cheap promotional gimmickry.
Hmm. And thank you for that. So I also wanted to ask you, if I may, about net in Net Promoter 3.0. You introduced this idea of an earned growth rate, which I do believe is something that you've worked with Connie Culture on, who's at Zurich. And Connie talks glowingly about what they've done, over there with that. And I wanted to ask you, can you tell me about this? And because it sounds like a really interesting and powerful way of tracking how much kind of like loyalty is driving kind of growth. So, that sort of thing that's always been, for many brands, has been slightly hard to pin down, as it were. So can you give us a bit of an insight into kind of how that kind of works?
Yeah, Connie is one of my favorite marketing execs forever. When she was at Lego, now at Zurich, she's terrific, and because she gets this notion that your job as a business, as a human, is is to make others' lives better,
Hmm.
and that's how you make your own life better. So earned growth is just my next step in the Net Promoter System evolution
Hmm.
of, we can't trust survey scores and that it's just, it's not working.
Hmm.
I don't fill out surveys, do you? It's a waste of my time. It's
No
abusive.
comment.
I But what can you track that lets you know if you've enriched a life and earned growth? Well, do they come back for more? And do they refer their friends?
Hmm.
And earned growth is just simply measuring those things as if they were important. And Connie at Zurich and other pioneering companies are shifting their net promoter philosophy and managing it through measuring those real things that have cash flow consequences and can be used to benefit, to do cost benefit analysis of enhancements and innovations to continue to wow customers. And I think earned growth is the right object. It's the North Star,
Hmm.
far better North Star than today's profits or today's costs.
And it feels like it's more because one of the things that I think that's plagued the sort of service and experience sort of space is the ability to demonstrate ROI from so many of these investments, and it feels like you're getting with like an earned growth rate approach, you're getting more very much closer to like a causal analysis. Going like we do this, we get that, rather than going, oh, if our numbers go like this, then there's a correlative kind of like there's a correlation between that and increased revenue.
Yeah, and companies don't measure it today.
Right.
When I started out in the earliest part of my career, I started embarrassing CEOs by saying, "Gee, what's your retention rate of customers?" And they don't know. They
Mhm.
didn't know back then. And so we went through the math of, a 5-point change in retention will swing the value profits from a customer by up to 100%. 5 point. So you just get the math and the economics in front of them. That same thing is going on today when you say, what percentage of your new customers are referred? Because earned growth is back for more and bring your friends. But it turns out that bring your friends is the purest signal.
Yeah.
And it's today. Back for people only have so much need for your product. You can
Mhm.
only cram so much down their throat.
Sure.
On the other hand, if you delight them and they tell a friend and that friend tells two friends and two friends, that's where you get this explosive growth. And if that's the truest signal that I think is gotta be front and center for great brands. Think about what defines your brand, not your advertising, not what you want to be. It's your core customers who
Mhm.
are out there talking to their friends. And if you think of your referring customers as the magnetic core that needs to be nurtured and strengthened so that they attract the right new customers who will likely become part of that core and strengthen it, that's the way to run a business.
Yep.
And most companies don't have the systems in place to measure and monitor that yet, but I think they will. Just like basketball and hockey teams didn't have advanced analytics, and now they do. They have goals for, goals against while you were on the ice or while you were on the floor. This is what the leading businesses are going to be doing as they start to see, oh, I can't reach my growth targets without getting more of my customers to be referring and taking the place of my expensive sales force. How am I going to use AI? I'm going to use AI to figure out who's referring me and what they're saying about me so I know what's special and what my magnetic core truly is, and so I can nurture it.
Perfect. So that's sort of always kind of like all I have to my list of questions I had that I've got to the end of, but I wanted to ask because it's a really big subject, a really interesting subject, and I completely agree that you know that loyalty is this underappreciated sort of like area of potential and growth. I
Yeah, it's
always
sort of like gravity before Newton.
yeah, right. I always kind of like there's a piece of research that was done. It's like old from a of a software vendor. I think it was ClickFox. Kind of it was over like 13 years ago. But I loved some of the findings that they came out with, where they said that in their research they found that 90% of all loyalty from a customer is driven by what happens at 2 points of a journey. Kind of one is what happens around the buying experience, and then the second is what happens when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, and I just thought I love that because it's so aligned with kind of human behavior, i.e., when we make decisions, we want to feel good about the decisions that we're making. We want to feel right and comfortable and secure in that. But we also realize that sometimes things go wrong. And because we have a fear of uncertainty and disappointment and failure and all these things, this kind of threat response, we want people to save us. in as quick and easy and as efficient manner as possible. And then you end up with this fused sort of idea of loyalties about this whole journey approach to things.
Well, I think Sara's tools at Amarsis are so promising because they can start to bring that reality, that human reality, into the database and the measurement and the manageable, hold people accountable for results. And people think, oh, AI is going to change everything. Sara's point that B2B loyalty works the same way. In fact, I think it's stronger because you know the players. People switch firms and they go to vendors and they meet at conferences. It's not advertising baloney and paying for Google Words and all of this bot growth. It's real results. And so how do you deliver real results and then let the right the digital tools spread that and clarify it and learn from it? So I do think, I really do think gravity, just like Copernicus got in a lot of trouble with the church when he
Yes.
took the courageous, I think it might be,
I love
we're
that
going
analogy.
around the sun. It's not an Earth-centric thing.
Yeah.
Right now, the world still believes it's a profit-centered thing.
Yeah.
And it's just not. That's a financial fiction that accountants dreamed up. It's a useful tool, but it's not the center of the universe. It's a customer-centered thing. And until you have the tools to understand which customers, how you plan to enrich their life, whether you're doing it, helping them spread the word effectively, those tools are being developed and yet to be developed.
Awesome. Sara, anything you want to kind of add kind of to that? Because it seems like that was a ringing endorsement.
That was so. Thank you, Fred. Much appreciated. And yeah, as you know, we've chatted about some of this before, but it's interesting your data, Adrian. Because I know you love data, so I'll throw some data back at you. That our most recent loyalty index said that over 60% of people would switch brands after one bad experience. So that to that point that you were making, and I think Fred, that's exactly that. You're thinking about profit and loss, and you're not thinking about that crucial impact that you've had. And what's worse is that you don't even know it happened. That you didn't know that it went wrong because you don't have the data to tell you. You didn't understand how you were engaging, whether that engagement happened face to face in a store or on TikTok or on email or on any of the plethora of channels that we have now to engage with each other. You have to understand it. And then exactly, I think we look at the way AI can help you is exactly the same way. That's where it helps, is making you aware of that data, feeding it back into you and allowing you to really go out and re-engage. And I think you made an interesting point, Adrian, that everybody knows things go wrong. But I wonder, and maybe it's a question we should ask next time, in those instances where somebody's had something go wrong, where the experience went wrong, how often did the brand go back and say, "We're so sorry," and try to do something about it? Or did it just fall into that gap? And then, of course, the loyalty falls right into that gap with it, and we move on. I think that would be an interesting thing to explore, actually.
Well, there is a curious kind of piece of research or theory called the service recovery paradox, which is not a strategy for success, I hasten to add, which says when something goes wrong and a brand responds well, then actually the amount of loyalty and satisfaction that they drive is higher than if nothing happened kind of at all. So that's why I say it's not a strategy for success. Don't start creating problems just to recover well, because yeah, you'll get
And if you want a prediction, I'll give you a prediction.
Go on then.
Go for it.
The company who helps its clients identify who is referring whom in a practical way is going to change the state of business and get very wealthy themselves. That they will change the world, because this invisible gravity out there is the most powerful force that has driven success. It's just only the genius, intuitive leaders who get it that can make the right decisions. And I think we're just waiting for some of the best tools. And I think Amarsis is on, they're poised. Let's hope it's Sara that makes it really easy for a CEO or a head of marketing or a head of finance to find out which customers came in on referral, which customers are referring, what's the nature of that process that we need to manage toward prosperity.
Perfect. Well, listeners, watch this space. Look out for that. Look out for that kind of that new capability, because I'm pretty sure it's coming too now. So that's all I have. Unless there's anything else that either of you want to kind of add, and we'll go into. If not, then we'll go into our quick fire questions. And the way I do this, I've got 3 that I'll ask each of you, kind of like. And the first one is all about boiling things down, because I've talked about a whole bunch of stuff, and so I've been asking people, the guests on the podcast, to complete this sentence as a way of boiling down to their best advice. And so I'll start with you, Sarah. Is that if you want to improve or drive improved or greater customer loyalty, Sarah says, do this. Complete that sentence.
Make customer loyalty your strategic compass within your organization.
Full stop. Thank you. And Fred, same question to you. If you want to increase customer loyalty, Fred says, do this. What would that be?
Learn who your true promoters are, not just the 9s and 10s, but the people who are bringing in at least one new customer through referral, and develop deep one-on-one relationships with them to understand how to grow and strengthen their magnetic pull.
Fantastic. I love that. It's a really kind of, I love that. It's a really human sort of thing that may be able to is make that connection, to build that.
You know who your sales force is.
Yeah.
You pay them a check. They're not really driving your prosperity.
Yeah.
It's your true promoters.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to know who they are and why they're doing that.
100%. 100%. Now, thank you for that. Next question. It has to be a punk one, because it's the Punk CX podcast. So I'm going to go back to you, Fred, actually, this time around. And so what company or brand do you think takes more punk approach to customer experience or customer loyalty, and why?
Punk, remind me.
It's like more kind of more about the, like, punk music, rather than being punk as in a somebody who's an annoyance. But it's like doing something that sort of from a thing of like doing something that's willing to be almost like counterintuitive, brave, risky, might not work, sort of thing. But actually, it's in line with kind of what they're doing, and it has an impact, as it were.
Yeah, I think of Costco
Okay.
as the ultimate radical brand. They refuse to advertise.
Okay.
They don't think of generating more profits from their customers. They don't look at revenues per customer as their number one metric. The CEO says our most important transaction is a member renewing his membership or her membership.
Right.
It's that notion of putting loyalty at the center and then building everything else around it. And those guys are crushing it in terms of stock price, great place to work. They've changed the face of retailing.
Right.
And they've done it because they get this. They have a membership, they keep track, and referring new members is the center of their universe.
Awesome. I love that. Sarah, same question to you. Which brand do you think takes more punk approach to customer experience or loyalty?
Well, I'm gonna go in completely different direction, which I think is kind of fun, actually. So I'm gonna pick Molton Brown.
Okay.
Molton Brown, they are a customer of ours. And Molton Brown think of themselves as luxury meets rebellion. I mean, how much more punk can you get than that, right? But you don't think of them that way. They are very, very focused on their brand values. They're British made. They're sustainability led. No animal testing. And they are completely and utterly unwilling to compromise on that. But at the same time, they're really focused on investing in data-driven customer experiences, and they care enormously about loyalty. And they get super excited about the fact of working with us. They see a 20% uplift in their repeat purchases. Well, it's not because they're just focusing on that bottom line. That's telling them that customers are coming back and that they want to continue purchasing from them. They want to engage with the brand, and that engagement and that loyalty actually matters to them. So I think that the idea that we can be a luxurious brand, but by the way, we're fast, we're personal, and we don't compromise from an ethical standpoint ticks a lot of boxes, particularly when you look at some of the results we had from our customer loyalty index this year.
Awesome. I love that. Another great example. So now brings me to my third and final question. that I always ask before rocking up, because I find myself, and have found myself over the last kind of year or so, wake up in the morning and sort of doom scrolling and trying sort of looking for good news stories around the place. And so, Sarah, I'm going to come back to you if I may, and I'd like to ask you to tell me a good news story so we can end on a positive note. Tell me something that you've seen in the last week that you think, oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
So something that I have, something that both of you actually may actually get excited about as well. I am an avid reader. It is my hobby. And when I look at the backgrounds of people I'm looking at, there's piles of books everywhere, which always makes me smile. However, apparently, Gen Z is driving a reading revival. Who would have thought? Waterstones recently reported a 5% sales uplift earlier this month, and they're actually going to open 10 more stores just because young adults are turning to read. And fascinatingly, they're turning to read because they've been seeing book talk, which comes through TikTok. I mean, who would have thought? But then that revival has actually extended, according to the BBC this week, to libraries.
Okay.
Libraries have seen a surge in physical book borrowing. Now, I don't know about the two of you, but one of my earliest memories is my mother taking me to the library every week to get my pile of books and going back. And it makes me so happy when I see other parts of the family with little ones do that. But it's spreading out, and apparently Gen Z is rediscovering reading. So I thought that was actually quite uplifting and left a smile on my face. So I thought I would share.
Well, I love that. And that's kind of very much in line with one of the predictions that came out of that piece I was telling you about, which says many people are tiring of digital only experiences, and they're looking for things that are a bit more kind of real and a bit more almost like kinesthetic in a way, and so that they can connect with in different ways. So I love that story. Now, Fred, hand it over to you. Tell me a good news story, sir.
It would be another podcast
Okay.
that has enriched my life, which is called Acquired.
Okay.
It analyzes great companies in a way that I think is, I recommend to my kids that this is more valuable than getting an MBA. Understand, and because they focus on the companies like IKEA and Costco, and make it clear how companies that build great businesses by treating their customers right and putting their customers at the center are generating cash flow that is far in excess of what stock market analysts could imagine. You know, the companies like Enterprise Rent-A-Car, who as private companies go from tiny little niche businesses in St. Louis, Missouri to the largest in the world, or IKEA grows to be the largest furniture retailer in the world. Apple is throwing off jillions of dollars in cash. You just can't explain that with the old earth-centered paradigm. And when you start looking at, the cash flow comes from customers coming back for more and bringing your friends. So I would say, listen to that Acquired podcast and put that frame, that set of spectacles on that watches what happens to a business when it earns its cash generation the right way.
Awesome. I love that. So thanks for that. And that brings us to the end. And I just want to say thank you both for that. I thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights, your expertise with us today. I think that was wonderful. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. So just thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrian and Sarah.
And Fred, it was lovely to see you.
Take care, everybody, and stay healthy.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.